How do you ask a client for feedback to get the right type of feedback that you need from a client? Jacob, what are your thoughts on this? How have you successfully trained your clients to give you good feedback?
A lot of this comes down to how you present the work. I used to do this early in my career, was just send an email or PDF, but that was a big mistake. It's always being present when you're talking about your work. So being on a video call or at least a call to talk through a proposal. I like doing screen shares that way because I can share the screen and talk about it slide by slide without them jumping ahead. I don't often have the privilege of meeting in person just because I run a global business. And I think having that control allows you to talk about your work. And as long as you've had a defined design brief and you've had all that structure in place, the feedback should be quite minimal or very directed, as long as that prior research had been done in the beginning. And I always ask them to provide feedback based on, not on their personal opinions, but think about it in terms of their target audience and the goals that we've established in the design brief and how it relates to those goals. So everyone's going to have their own opinion, and that's well and good. I also ask if it's like a conference with like 10 plus people, that they consolidate feedback first, not to have a conversation on the phone with 10 people in the room. It's never a good experience. So there's always like one manager that's really running it all, and I ask him to get the feedback. And sometimes they have a chat in the room. Other times they get back to me in an email or a call. So that's the best way to manage feedback, is to have a great design brief up front and have everything in place to refer back to in writing. That way you can talk about it in that respect.
I agree with all those points. So let's distill it down into some bullets. So the bullet number one is always present the work. Don't just send it, present it to the client. Bullet number two that you mentioned on there, you talked a little bit about training your client on how to give feedback. I'm a big believer in this. When I present the work, before I even show them the design, I tell them how to give feedback on it. I say, okay, we want to know which of these you prefer the most. On the ones that you don't like, we want to know why you don't like it. Not just, oh, I don't like that design. Tell me what it is you don't like about it. Tell me that, do you like this typography? We can mix and match. Do you like the typography on this one, but the icon on this one, if we're talking about logo design? So you pre-train the client before you show them the designs. Pre-train them on the type of feedback that is valuable to you. So I think that that's bullet number two. So you present it, train them on how to give the feedback. One that I love that you mentioned was consolidate feedback from all of the people. You can't get 10 different messages from 10 different people at your client's business, all telling you what they think on the logo. You need one person as the designated person to give feedback on their end. And that person has the responsibility to consolidate all the feedback from all the people into one cohesive decision from the client. I think that's super, super valuable as well. What other bullet points, Jacob, would you add to that, to those three?
Yeah, I just had to work with the decision makers to begin with as much as possible. So often, I guess mid-sized businesses, there's one person you speak to, but they often report into someone else. And if you can get the decision maker in the process from the beginning, it is difficult, but really try to get that, then it will make the process a bit easier, because often you'll go through one or a couple of rounds and then they'll present to the CEO or the marketing guy and you'll get kicked back. So try to get them into the process from the beginning.
Great advice. And I've been stung on that so many times. I like to go at the start, and I have some content planned for this, but go at the start of the engagement and define the roles of each of the people on the client side. Are you working with a marketing manager and they're just the facilitator of the project for the client side, but they're not the decision maker? They may be just an influencer in the decision. And a lot of times we work with that person through our first 3 rounds and they love it. And then they finally show it to the decision maker, like you said, and the decision maker throws it back and says, no, this isn't what we wanted, and you're going back to square one, then you're talking about change orders, and it just gets messy. So define the roles at the start and find out who the decision maker is right at the start of the engagement, and then make sure that that person is seeing the work at the appropriate time in the flow of the project. It can save you from getting in these 6, 7, 8 round projects of getting that kickback like you mentioned. I think that's really, really good advice.